this week's Parasha, it's talking about the mitzvah of Omer, of the entire Sfirat HaOmer and what we need to do and why, which many people have a lot of questions about where it comes from, why we do that. And of course, in this beautiful period of the Omer, which is supposed to be very happy and festive, there's something very negative, that we mourn the death of the 24 students of Rabbi Akiva, which is kind of contradicting each other. Why is it contradicting? Because it's supposed to be a very happy and festive time, and at the same time we take on ourselves all these laws of mourning, not to take haircuts, not to make parties, and so forth. Now, last week we learned about one of the most important mitzvot in the Torah, that is called Ve'ahavta L'Reacha Kamocha. We spoke about it last week, and needless to say that we speak so many times about the mitzvah of Ahavat Israel, that Rabbi Akiva says that it's klal gadol b'Torah, it's a big foundation in the entire Torah, is Ve'ahavta L'Reacha Kamocha, that you have to love another person like you love yourself. Amazingly, it says L'Reacha. It doesn't mention the word Jew or non-Jew. It says L'Reacha, to your fellow friend, doesn't matter who it is, and you have to love him in the same level that you love yourself. So we spoke about it last week, about this whole concept, how can one love each other in such a level. But this week we meet something even a greater question, because we know that we're mourning now the death of 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. But how is that? He's the one who preaches Ve'ahavta L'Reacha Kamocha and all his students die? Now this is not 2 students, 24,000 students. Can you imagine what's 24,000? It's a city. It's half of Tzfat. It's just imagine. This is not a yeshiva that has 10 students. This is a city. So we want to approach this big question today. Why did they die? How did they die? And how is that connected to our parasha? And like I said, last week we learned about the mitzvah, which is a mitzvah taseh. It's a positive mitzvah from the Torah, Ve'ahavta L'Reacha Kamocha. How come the students of Rabbi Akiva did not apply that? Now there's a story about a certain individual. He's known as Rabbi Akiva Igel. He's a very big tzaddik from a very recent generation, not too long ago, that was in Eastern Europe, wrote many books, commentaries, an unbelievable individual. And amazingly, a few weeks ago we had here a guest for Shabbat, and somebody donated books. We were cleaning all the books, and as we were cleaning the books, they walked in. And the husband was interested in looking at the books. What did we get? And I said, oh, these are a set of books from Rabbi Akiva Igel. So the lady says, oh, that's my great-great-great-great-grandfather. I'm a descendant of him. So he was a very special individual. There's once a story that on Pesach, he had a very big Leil Seder. And of course, just imagine what type of a Leil Seder, what gems he was sharing that night, and everybody was sitting there waiting to hear every little thing and every little piece of the Seder he did in a very particular way. And then something happened during the meal, that there was one poor person around the table, didn't eat for like 2 weeks, and when they served the bowls of soup, he got so excited for the food. Can you imagine? There probably his Shulchan Orech was like at midnight, like we had this Pesach. We ate at 12:30. He got so excited that the food arrived. He went like a motion like that, and the whole bowl turned over and spilled all over the table. He got so embarrassed. He didn't know what to do with himself. And Rabbi Akiva Igel saw that he's all embarrassed, that he didn't know what to do with himself. So he flipped his bowl too. And he says, what's going on with this table? Something's wrong with the table. Maybe you should check it after the holiday. This table is all shaking. And the other guy was like, he was calm. Because he so cared to see that this person, he got so affected that everybody looked like, what, he's so sloppy, he's pushing his bowl of food. That's how refined he was, and he so much cared about the feelings of another person that he pretended also that his ball went flying, just that this person is not going to feel bad. And there is a Mishnah that it says, Kol sheruach hamakom nocha hemeno, ruach habriot nocha hemeno. Kol sheruach habriot nocha hemeno, ruach hamakom nocha hemeno. Meaning that, how do you want to know that a person is a very refined, God-fearing person? That people like that person, that he's nice to people, that he's polite to other people, not like. So a person can be a very learned person, a very long beard, he's not nice to other people, something's missing there. And with this story with Rabbi Akiva Iger, it comes to strengthen the Mishnah that when people around a certain individual, they find that the person is comforting and is nice, then Hashem is happy with that person. This is a way to indicate how do you know a person is kosher, so to say. I mean, we don't eat people, but sometimes you see a person that might dress like a rabbi and behave like maybe like a rabbi, or today in our generation it's very deceiving. A lot of people who dress to act, but far away from the reality. And one of the ways to indicate is you see how polite the person is, or how, what's called in Hebrew, na'im alichot. He's nice. He's not a rough person, doesn't scream, doesn't raise his voice, doesn't humiliate somebody in public. I mean, of course, you can't judge every situation. Sometimes you see a situation and it's very easy to point a finger. There was once a shul where I used to pray, and the rabbi Bemet is a very special individual, and there was a certain guy who used to come there for months and annoy everybody. And he would complain and scream and disturb, and Bemet, it was very disturbing. One time the rabbi got upset at him and screamed at him. Now, we all knew, listen, this is a build-up of months, and he deserved it, and the rabbi did the right thing. But if somebody would be there the first time and see the rabbi screaming, he would be like, oh, this is not a kosher rabbi, look how he threw him out of the shul. So it's important also to know how to judge the situation. But in general, when you know somebody, and somebody's nature is 100% nice, once in a blue moon he does an act that's a little bit extreme, okay, once in a blue moon. But if a person you see constantly that is not a nice person, a person can be very learned. I know somebody who is a genius in the Torah, he's the most rude person you ever met. So all the Torah is worthless. So one way to see, to have an indication when a person is a kosher person, again, not kosher to eat him, but rather that he's standing behind what he's supposed to be, and not only a public figure, any individual that has compassion to another person and treats people equally, then you know that Hashem is very happy with him. And you know that that's a very high quality. So this brings us to a very big question. How come the students of Rabbi Akiva were not treating each other nice? How did they get to a point that they had to all die? I mean, you have to understand that the students of Rabbi Akiva, each one is a minimum a Rabbi Kanievsky. This is the level. It's not that they were like some bachers in a yeshiva learning halacha. Each one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva was a giant. And they still didn't treat each other the right way, and to a point that they all die. How is that going to be? How could that be? Now, in this week's Parasha, it's talking about the counting of the Omer. This week's Parasha is called Emor, and it's mentioning the mitzvah of counting of the Omer. Now, what really happened in this mitzvah? We learned about it in the previous class, is the prohibition, what's called Isur Chadash. Any crops that would grow from the beginning of the year till Pesach was prohibited to eat it. And the way they used to do it is that the day before Pesach, the priests would go out to the field and they would tie bundles of wheat together, so it would be very easy to cut it off. And the next day after Pesach, they would go out to the field, make a whole big celebration out of it, a big party, cut the crops, and then they would sacrifice it as a mincha, as an offering, and this would be called the Minchat HaOmer. Now the prohibition was that any crops that was growing till Pesach, you're not allowed to eat it. We just learned that in the previous shiur. It's called Chadash. For the ones of you who weren't with us in the beginning, sometimes you go to a bakery and they tell you this is Kemach Chadash. And a lot of people don't understand the term. Kemach is flour. It means that it was not touched till Pesach. Now in our generation, when we don't have a Kohen, then we don't have to give the crops to the Kohen, but we have to wait till the next day after Pesach, till the 16th day of Nisan. After the 16th day, you're allowed to eat from that flour, and it's all 5 grains. In the days when we had Bet HaMikdash, then they had to wait to give it to the Kohen. The Kohen would do a celebration, and then they would sacrifice, offer the sacrifice, and then everybody was able to eat. Like I mentioned in the previous class, that there's an argument between the rabbis if it's in our days also for the crops that are grown in the diaspora or not, or just in Israel. So there is a halacha argument here. Most go by that the crops in the diaspora don't have the prohibition of Chadash. It has to be only in Israel. But just know that in some of the bakeries that you go to, you'll see it will tell you Kemach Yashan. Kemach Yashan is basically the opposite. Well, Kemach Yashan, it's because it was before Pesach. But you'll see that this concept of Chadash. So that was the prohibition of the Omer. Now, the way they did it is that the Kohanim would do a big party out of it. And the whole party was to go to the field, cut a few pieces of the crops, and then make an offering from that. The reason why they made a whole party out of it is because they had to strengthen the oral law. The sages at the time of the temple, was a very hard time, because there was a group of people that they were called the tzdokim, that they went against the rabbis. There were 2 groups, the tzdokim and the baitusim. They went against the rabbis, and they said, we only follow what it says in the Torah. It says in the Torah, lo tevashel gdi b'chalev imo, don't cook a calf in the mother's milk. That's what we do. Everything else that the sages say us, we don't go by. So they would only follow literally what it says in the Torah. It says you should not light fire in Shabbat, lo tevaru esh b'chol moshavdechem. That's the prohibition, that's it. So they totally went against the rabbis, against the sages. And they created a big problem. So at the time, the authority, they wanted to strengthen the oral law, because these tzdokim, they came and said, this whole Omer, it has nothing to do with us. It's not a rule that applies to us. So our sages at the time wanted to strengthen the oral law and the authority of the rabbis, so they made a whole big thing out of this whole cutting of the Omer. And again, you have to understand that it was a few piles of wheat that they would cut, chick-chack, make an offering, and that's it. That was the whole thing. So, but they did a big thing out of it. Now, starting from then, they started to count the days. And up until today, we count the days. Hayom Yom Rishon ba'Omer, Hayom Yom Sheni, and Shlishi, and so forth. So now came a big question, why do they count from the bottom up? Technically, they should do a countdown. They should do this count 50, today's 49, today's 48, you count down, technically. Why would you count going up? And up until today, we count up, not counting down. So, first of all, there's one commentary, his name is Abu Dram, that he mentioned that this whole period of the Omer was a very sensitive period. We don't relate with that because you want to buy something, you go to the supermarket. But in the olden days, the farmers, everything was depending on the farmers. No crops, no food. So the farmers were very strict in that time, because that's the time when they had to pray for all the crops to grow. If there would be some type of a problem, crops would not grow, and then nobody has food. And then chas v'shalom, that would affect the entire village or city. So the Abu Draham says that this was a very a sensitive period, and all the farmers would pray all day long. They would pray, please, there should be enough rain, should be that the crops, everything should be good, that I shouldn't have any disease, that locusts should not come, anything. It was a very sensitive period, because if everything would work well, then you have food for the rest of the couple months, if not for the next year. And if not, chas v'shalom, then the problem would be that there wouldn't be any crops. So the farmers, it was a very sensitive time. So they would count every day, just let's period, be over already. So this is one explanation why they would count going up and not going down. Because technically, when you think about it, that first of all, the Torah doesn't say how to count. It just says that you have to count 50 days. Technically, one would think that you would do a countdown, not a count up. In Bechlal, there's a story that there was one certain individual that whatever, he did something wrong, legally wrong, and he was found guilty in the kingdom, and they threw him in the pit. That's how it was in the olden days. The king had a pit in the backyard of the palace, and they would throw the people in. So they threw him in. One time, the king needed advice about something, and somebody whispered, listen, that guy that just got thrown in the pit, he has the answer. Like the story with Yosef HaTzadik, pull out Yosef out of the pit. So the king didn't want to make a whole issue out of it. He went to the pit, asked the person the question, he answered him, he was like, ooh, this is a very wise man. The next day he had another question. He goes again to the pit, asks him his question. The guy gives him a very good answer. He says, this is a very smart man. I can't now take him out now. This is going to be embarrassing. So every day he would go to the pit and ask him his questions. And this guy would answer him the best answers. At some point, he would go every day and just ask him questions and learn from him. After a while, he started bringing all his kids with their questions. But he was still in the pit. At some point, the king says, listen, this guy, his place is not in the pit. His place is next to me. I need somebody like this. This is a very smart individual. So he comes to the guy and he tells him, listen, your place is not in here. I'm taking you out. Tomorrow I'm taking you out of the pit. I'm going to make a whole big thing out of it that is going to be legal. And not only that I'm taking you out of the pit, I'm going to make you my right-hand man. And to top it all, in 50 days, I'm going to give you my daughter to marry her. Oh. The next day, they pull him out of the pit, like Yosef HaTzadik, and he makes him his right man. Now the guy started becoming very scared. Why? Because he says in 50 days there's a chasana. In 50 days there's a wedding. So the king said he's going to take me out. He took me out. He said he's going to make me his right hand. He made me his right hand. So he told me I'm going to marry his daughter. Now there's going to be a wedding. I'm not ready to marry the princess. What, I'm going to become royalty now? I have to get ready. He started getting under pressure. So he started counting the days. Oh my God, in 40 days, 49, in so many days, I'm going to be now marrying the daughter of the king. I'm going to become like the royalty now. So he started counting the days. Of course, this is not a real story. This is just a parable that the same thing happened to us in Mitzrayim. We were in a pit. We were thrown there. And then God comes and through Moshe Rabbeinu, tells them, I'm going to take you out of Mitzrayim. They didn't believe. He comes and tells through Moshe Rabbeinu, not only that I'm going to take you out of Mitzrayim, I'm going to take you to Har Sinai. They didn't believe. They're like, you're not taking us out of here. We're here for hundreds of years. And then again, through Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, I'm not only going to take you out of Mitzrayim and I'm going to bring you to Har Sinai, I'm also going to give you the Torah. I'm going to make you marry my daughter. I'm going to give you my daughter. I'm going to give you the Torah. They didn't believe. But then came the day of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and Moshe Rabbeinu took them out of Mitzrayim. Then they were like, whoa, wait a minute. He told us he's going to take us out of Mitzrayim. We didn't believe. He took us out of Mitzrayim. He told us that he's going to bring us to Har Sinai. He's going to bring us. Now, in 50 days, there's a wedding. So they started getting all hyped up. We're not ready to get the Torah. So they started counting the days. That's why they didn't count back. They count forward. Because of the excitement and oh my gosh, I'm getting the Torah. This is the real deal. In the beginning, they didn't believe. But when they saw that God took them out of Mitzrayim, they started to believe. So we're being told now for so many centuries that Mashiach is coming. Nobody believes. That's off the subject, but interview any person about Mashiach. The reality is that the majority of people don't believe that the Mashiach is really coming. And I'm talking about the religious people, not the not religious people. We spoke about it many times, how most people don't really believe that Mashiach is coming, because if they would believe, they would act accordingly. But very soon, can you imagine the first blow of the horn? People will be like, oh my gosh, it's true. He's coming. He came. Now what? Who? Bet HaMikdash. So this is very, very soon. So this parable comes to explain to us why we count forward and not why don't we count backwards. So we say today is the first day, then the second day, from the excitement of actually getting the Torah. Now, this is all in general the concept of the Parasha, talking about the Omer, which is all nice, and we understand now why we count the Omer. But from this point on, the story starts becoming a little bit more sophisticated. How come the students of Rabbi Akiva were dying? And this is a big part in our counting of the Omer. The counting of the Omer takes us exactly 3 minutes every night. I don't think most people really count the Omer preparing that in 50 days or in 49 days or in 39 days we're getting the Torah. People just say it at 2 o'clock in the morning with one eye closed. They forget to say the night before, they say the next day without the bracha. Not so many people are so into the counting with excitement, like as if they're getting the Torah. But one thing that we do follow, and everybody follows, is all the dinim, all the laws of avlut, of being in mourning. We don't cut our hairs, we don't do parties, we don't listen to music, we don't get engaged, we don't do so many things. I mean, if you make an engagement, you can make it official, and you can make a party out of that. There are all sorts of laws and engagements during the Omer. I'm just throwing that because there's many things that we don't do. Of course, there is an argument. Hold on. There is an argument till what time was the plague. The Sephardis go by that the plague was from the day after Pesach and it ended in Lag BaOmer. That's why Sephardis, after Lag BaOmer, they already start listening to music, getting married, and so forth. The Ashkenazim say no, it went all the way into Shavuot. So the Ashkenazim, they keep these laws of the mourning till the end of the Omer. But the question is, how in such a situation the students of Rabbi Akiva failed. Now, in very general, the story of Rabbi Akiva, first of all, Rabbi Akiva was born 50 years before the destruction of the Second Temple. So we're talking about, the story happened 2,000 years ago. To be exact, it's 2,000 minus 4. 4 or 3, don't catch me by the year, but about 1996. That's about. So Rabbi Akiva should be now 1996 or 97. Don't take me by my exactly on the year, but that's when it happened, 2,000 years ago. Because Rabbi Akiva was born literally 50 years before the destruction of the Holy Temple. Now, he was born a very simple person, child of converts, was a very ignorant individual, didn't know how to read and write, and he found a job. And he used to work for the richest person in Yerushalayim, who was the Bill Gates of the generation, known as Kalba Savoa, and he used to clean the stables. That's the level of what job he could get. And he would clean where the horses were. Now his daughter was a very special individual and couldn't find a shidduch. Finally, one day she comes to her father and she tells him, I found who to get married to. And he says, oh, who did you bring? So she told him, Akiva. Told her, Akiva? The guy who cleans the stables? You're not getting married to him. She says, yeah, that's the man. He says, okay, if you're marrying him, you're out of the loop. You're not staying here. And that's what happened. That she ended up marrying him, and her father threw her out of the house. So from being a rich, spoiled girl, living in a palace, suddenly she was living like a poor homeless person on the street in a tent. And the story was that Rabbi Akiva might have been a very not learned individual, but she saw the potential. She saw that there's something very special in this man, because his midot, his attributes, his character traits were very refined. And she says, that's the quality I need. And of course the story goes that he went to yeshiva, he started learning, and after 12 years in yeshiva, he comes home. And as he's coming home, he's about to knock on the door, and he hears a conversation, and he hears somebody talking to his wife, and that individual says, you don't care that your husband deserted you or left you for 12 years? She says, no, if I would have a way to contact him, I would tell him to stay another 12 years. So he heard that, and he didn't even kiss the mezuzah. He made a U-turn and went back to yeshiva. There is a contradiction in the story if it was her friend who was talking to her, or maybe the Satan who came, who wanted to break the marriage, that he made Rabbi Akiva hear such a thing. But the reality was that he made a U-turn and went back to yeshiva for another 12 years. After 24 years being in yeshiva, he's coming back. He's already the Rebbe of the generation, the Gedol Hador. He's 64 years old. He comes home with 24,000 students. That was a big commotion. The Rebbe is coming, and everybody came out to see. And one woman starts to push between the crowd. Everybody's pushing her away. She's like, no, I want to come closer to the Rebbe, and they're all pushing her away. Of course, Rabbi Akiva stops everybody and says, bring her over. And they make a way. She comes over. And everybody wanted to stop her. You can't go next to the Rebbe. And he tells everybody, everything that belongs to me and to you is because of her. So then he returned. He was 64 years old. He comes back with 24,000 students. And again, like I said before, each one of these students is a Rabbi Kanievsky's level. This is not like somebody from the yeshiva. He came with pillars. And then the sad reality is that there was some type of a plague, and they all died. Some say they died within 2-3 days. We don't know exactly how fast it happened. There's one opinion that says that within 2-3 days they all died. Excuse me?
Why?
Yeah, there's different opinion. One opinion says a couple days. One opinion says that it took 2 weeks. One opinion says no, till Lag BaOmer the plague stopped. But you're talking here about an individual that is something unbelievable. In the age of 40, learned how to read and write. 24 years later, he's becoming the Rebbe, the head of the generation, that up until today is the pillar of the oral Torah. And then all his students start dying. Now, his entire theme, his motto, was V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. That's what he was teaching. That he took a pasuk from the Torah, a verse from the Torah that we learned about it last week, and he says, this is the entire Torah. Ze klal gadol b'Torah. This is the main rule, the main law in the Torah is love another person like you love yourself. And close to home, his students fail, and they all die. Which brings a huge wonder. What did they do? What did they do that they had to die? Well, they killed each other. They cheated on each other. These were Talmidei Chachamim. These are very holy, special people. What did they do that they had to die? So there's one place in the Talmud that says they didn't treat each other with respect. That's one of the reasons. They lo nahagu kavod ze bazeh. They didn't treat each other nice. And that's what caused them to die. Which again, you would say, what? Such great people and they couldn't treat each other b'kavod? They couldn't treat each other kavod as they didn't respect each other. The thing is that they loved each other so much. They had unbelievable love to each other. They did do v'ahavta l'racha kamocha. Just that they loved each other so much that they could not tolerate somebody else's opinion. They could not tolerate the fact that your opinion doesn't match my opinion. And of course in the Torah, I'm not talking about a style of clothes. They did love each other to an unbelievable level. But they could not tolerate a different opinion. You had to go by my opinion, not by your opinion. And that brought them to a point that they didn't treat each other with the right respect. And there's a very big difference between love and respect. Respect is one thing, and love is a whole different thing. And love is a very selfish attribute. Because who do you really love? Do you love the other person or you love yourself? And in most cases, love is very, very selfish. Because I love something that benefits me. You know, there's a story that there was once a group of fishermen, and Friday was the day. They would go out to the ocean, and that's the day when they had good customers. Everybody wanted to buy fish for Shabbat. One time they go to the ocean, and they fish up a big fish. The story says it was a fish that is called Amnon, very big, healthy, fat fish. And the guy who pulled it out was very, very happy. He's like, okay, I'm going to take it right away to the wealthy person of the city. He will buy it just like that. He comes with his big fish, knocks on the door. The wife opens the door. Ooh, wow, look at this beautiful fish. Let's take it to my husband. He would right away would want to buy it from you. Okay, they go in. The rich person sees the fish right away, stands up. Ooh, that's my favorite fish. I can't believe you found it. How much do you want? And he tells him a price and a half. And he's like, I don't care how much it is. I want that fish. I love that fish. So in the last breath of the fish's life, the fish opens up his mouth and says, you liar. You don't like me, you like yourself. So we love things, but we don't love the thing, we love ourselves. I don't love ice cream, I love myself, because I love the taste that the ice cream gives to me. And I'm selfish, because what I love is not, I don't love the thing, I love myself to a point that I want to indulge myself. I want to benefit something from the love. So I can love another person, but if he's not good for me anymore, I don't love him anymore. And that's the sad reality with love, that love can stop in a second. When I benefit something out of the love, then there's going to be love going on. If I'm stopping to benefit, or it's not good for me anymore, love can stop right away. So the attribute, I don't know if to say even love is an attribute, but the motion of love is a very selfish motion. But the opposite of love that is not selfish is respect. Respect has nothing to do with love. It's two separate things. So the students of Rabbi Akiva, they loved each other, but they didn't have respect to each other. And that's the problem. Is that the only attribute that doesn't involve your ego is respect. In love, there's a lot of ego. And a lot of people mistaken it, and they say, oh, I love this person so much. So what if you love him? It doesn't mean anything. I know people that they love their kids, they love their parents, and they treat them like garbage. Because there's nothing to do. I love many things, but I love it because what type of benefit it gives to me. And respect, that's a whole different thing. And there's a story about the Arizal who lived here in Sfat. It's a very famous story. Let's go back in the time machine close to 500 years, 400 and something years. And this place, this holy place here, was the capital of Torah in the world. Now we know about the Arizal, the Ramak, maybe a few more other individuals that are famous. You know what was going on here? I mean, every individual here was a giant. This was a very special period in Tzfat. I mean, we had the same generation. The Bet Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He had a personal angel, a Magid, that came and taught him everything. You had the Arizal here, you had the Rabbi Chaim Vital, the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordevor, Shlomo El-Kabetz. I mean, the list goes on and on. I can't even imagine what was going on in the city. If you're a little bit sensitive, you walk through the alleys here, you can feel like the stones here, what testimony they can give. So the story says that one Shabbat, the Arizal is walking with his student Rabbi Chaim Vital, and they're talking, and I mean, they were not talking about the Yankee who won the Super Bowl. They're talking about deep concepts in Kabbalah. Comes a certain individual, speeds up his pace, and he goes in front of the Arizal. Now this individual was not a simple individual. This individual was a very big Talmid Chacham. And he did not like it that the Arizal is going in front of him, because he's a Talmid Chacham. Now if you have to understand, the Arizal, as great as he was, Arizal is Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, he was 34 years old. It's like a little boy with a little few hairs sticking out of his head. When he came to Tzfat, everybody kicked him out. Who are you? And the Arizal came to Rabbi Chaim Vital, who was almost triple in his age, and he told him, Eliyahu Navi told me to come and teach you. He almost got kicked out of the window. Rabbi Chaim Vital was a very high-level individual, and he tells, you came to teach me? So in the beginning, the Arizal was not so welcomed here. He was a young man. So this Talmid Chacham did not like the fact that the Arizal is walking in front of him, so he speed up his pace and went in front of the Arizal. And they're walking and walking and walking, and Rabbi Chaim Vital didn't like that. Why is this guy walking in front of my Rebbe? The Arizal has to walk in the front, and anybody else has to be in the back. It's not appropriate. And at some point, the Rabbi Chaim Vital got very upset. How does he dare go in front of the Arizal? And this was a Talmid Chacham. This was not some farmer. At some point, they got to the place where they were supposed to take a certain path. And this Talmid Chacham goes into a completely different path. The Arizals continue going after him. That's where Rabbi Chaim Vital stops and says, wait a minute, we have to go there. Why going there? Arizal told him, listen, he's a Talmid Chacham. I'm obligated in giving respect to a Talmid Chacham. He is a Talmid Chacham. He is a sage. I have to give him respect. I'm going to go behind him on his path, whatever he needs to take, because I'm obligated in giving him respect. Doesn't matter right now who I am. Doesn't matter how great I am. It doesn't matter that I have to go now. That's off my course already. I have to go this way. He's a Talmid Chacham. He deserves respect. I'm walking after him. He deserves it. And he explained to the Rabbi Chaim Vital that somebody else deserves respect, you give it. Respect has nothing to do with if you like the person or not. And respect is a very hard thing to do, because it's the only character trait that you have to leave your ego behind. And you respect another person, doesn't matter who it is. So much more so when it's a Talmid Chacham. But even if it's somebody else, doesn't matter who you are. The problem with the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, that they were great, but they couldn't give each other respect. Lo nagu kavod ze bazeh. This is what it says in the Gemara. That they didn't give each other the right respect. And that's what we need to take from this entire period of the Omer. Not only from this parasha, is the entire period is the respect for another individual. And when Rabbi Akiva says, V'ahavta le'acha kamocha, that you should love another fellow person, he meant not the love that I like you, that I have to respect you. Like I would respect myself, or whatever type of respect that I would want to get, that's the type of respect that I need to give. That's why Rabbi Akiva says this is klal gadol b'Torah, because it's all about respect. It has nothing to do with love. If you focus on the word love, sorry, this is just a selfish act. It's very, very rare that my love is true. This is what's called the love of Amnon v'Tamar. It's a story in the Tanakh. That if I'm benefiting something from the love, there's not real love here. And the real relationship is built on respect. And that goes into marriage, it goes into business relationships, it goes into a father and child, it goes into me and a random person in the street. Is what type of respect I'm willing to give that person. And that's the main reason why the Talmidim died, and that's why we're mourning, not the death. I mean, there's a big question. You know how many other sages died? Why am I not mourning the death of Moshe Rabbeinu? Why on the 7th day of Adar I'm not doing a day of mourning? Or anybody else? Why Dafka the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva? And why Dafka in the Omer? What, great sages didn't die in the thoughts of Chanukah? Why shouldn't I make Chanukah Day? 8 days of mourning, no cutting the hair on the 8 days of Chanukah. Why these 24,000 students and not many other sages, and why this specific time? Because we're going to learn Bezrat Hashem in the next class, the point of this time is the time of Tikkun HaMidot, is refinement of character. That's why we mention in the counting. We count Hayom such and such. Hayom Shlosha Yamim LaOmer, 3 days to the Omer. But then we also count in it which attributes, Chesed Shebegvura, Tiferet Shebehod, whatever it is. Because the whole period is refining my character trait. That's why we're counting specifically in this time. Because we need to reiterate the whole point, the whole tikkun that we need to do is about respect. It's about accepting another person, making space for another person. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how great you are, doesn't matter if you're 10 times greater than that person. That person deserves a certain amount of respect, then you give it because that person deserves it. And that's the V'ahavta l'cha kamocha. Going back to the story when we said with Rabbi Akiva Iger, he wanted to give that individual the same level of respect, so he threw his bowl too. That person will not going to feel, wait a minute, I'm totally out of place. And what we need to learn from that is how much the honor of somebody else is important. Sometimes by just doing a certain act, you make that person feel special or welcome or part of the congregation. That's what it takes. Sometimes just getting up to a certain individual, shaking their hand, welcome them, come, welcome to our table, welcome to the class, whatever it is knowing when to make space to another person and to respect another individual's feelings and emotions. And it's not always about me. Sometimes, and in most cases, it's about somebody else. It's not about me. It's about that individual, and sometimes they need to be in the spotlight. They need to be a little bit on the stage and talk. And that's what I want to take from this parasha and in the entire period of the Omer, is to acknowledge somebody else's needs. And I have to learn from the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva that it's all about the relationship of respect and not the relationship of love. And in many cases you would say, but I love you so much. I say, so what if you love me? So what if you love that individual? It depends on respect. And same thing if you want to take it to marriage. One can say, oh, I love my wife a lot. Yeah, but you don't respect her. There's no respect here. And a relationship is built only on respect. It's not built from love. Because love is selfish. What is it in it to me? How am I benefiting something from it? But respect has nothing to do with me. I put my ego aside and I say, okay, how can I make you feel better? How can I make space for you? So Bezrat Hashem, we should be able to apply. Last week we learned about V'ahavta l'cha kamocha, is that we have to love another person like I love myself. Why? Because I demand respect, then I should give that. And that's the real meaning of V'ahavta l'cha kamocha, that I need to recognize when somebody else needs his space. And Bezrat Hashem, we should know how to apply it in our life, that we should not come to the point that we have our spiritual death, so to say. The Talmidim of the students of Rabbi Akiva had a physical death. This can affect us in a spiritual death. Needless to say that if we reach to a point that somebody else's respect is so important to us, and we treat each other with the right respect and love, needless to say that we will be fulfilling the positive mitzvah of V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, which just by itself will make space for the ultimate redemption to come, because this is what we're lacking. We're lacking this motion of V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. That's why you will see on the grave of the Arizal, and for the ones of you who use the Sidur of the Arizal, it opens with one verse. It says, "Areni mekabel alai mitzvah taseh." I'm here accepting on myself a positive mitzvah. Shel ve'achavta lecha kamocha. Go to the grave, you'll see that's what it says on it. I mean, not on the actual stone. There's nothing says on the stone, but right next to it there's the plaque, and you'll see. Because the Arizal says, before you start anything, first start with accepting the positive mitzvah of ve'ahavta lecha kamocha. Then, after you do that, then you can continue. So it's all about making space to another person. Needless to say that that's what's stalling the Geulah, at least in my opinion, that there's not enough respect and love for another individual. And we tend to disqualify somebody very fast because he belongs to a different group, or a different congregation, or he's dressed different, or he's from a different nation, or he speaks different. And we tend to cut another person very fast without even knowing who they are. And the real V'ahavta l'recha kamocha is that I know how to make space for everybody. And the motion of accepting every person, which meaning that I have what's called avat chinam, there's no love with no conditions, and I respect who you are, even though your opinion is completely different than mine, even though you think completely different things than me, even though you dress different than me, even though you have a completely different view in politics, but I still obligated in respecting you, and I need to make space for you. I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to like you. But I have to respect you, and I have to make space for you. If we know how to apply that, I can guarantee to you that the redemption is going to be coming much, much, much faster. Bezrat Hashem should have a beautiful, beautiful week.